How to Win Friends and Influence People, the classic multi-million copy bestseller by Dale Carnegie. Part 1 of 3. The Unseen Blueprint of Success. It's a startling fact, but research conducted by the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching revealed something that turns our entire perception of success on its head. Are you ready for it? The research showed that even in technical fields like engineering, about 15% of one's financial success comes from technical knowledge. Only 15%. So what about the other 85%? Where does the vast majority of our success, our influence, our earning power truly come from? The answer is as simple as it is profound. It comes from skill in human engineering. It's about personality and the ability to lead people. Think about that for a moment. We spend years in school, we accumulate degrees, we master complex subjects, believing that knowledge is the golden ticket. We fill our heads with facts, figures, and theories, yet we neglect the one skill that accounts for 85% of our life's outcomes. It's like building a powerful, magnificent engine, but forgetting to install the steering wheel. You have all the power in the world, but you have no control, no direction, and you're almost guaranteed to crash. This is the core problem, the invisible barrier that holds so many brilliant, hardworking people back. They are operating with a staggering deficiency, a blind spot so large it encompasses almost everything that matters. They don't know how to deal with people. They don't know how to build relationships, to inspire action, to win cooperation, or to change hearts and minds without causing resentment. And the result? Frustration, missed opportunities, arguments that lead nowhere, a feeling of being misunderstood and unappreciated. Does any of this sound familiar? You propose an idea at work and it's met with a wall of resistance. You try to correct a simple mistake and it blows up into a major conflict. You feel like you're doing everything right, but you're not getting the results, the recognition, or the happiness you deserve. You are caught in a trap. It's a trap built from our most natural, impulsive, and yet completely wrong instincts for human interaction. We criticize, we condemn, we complain, we argue. We talk about what we want, thinking we can force the world to bend to our will. But it never works. It is a lonely, frustrating, and ultimately losing strategy. But what if I told you there's a way out? A set of principles so powerful they can revolutionize your life. What if there was a tested, proven method to not only steer your life in the direction you want, but to have others enthusiastically help you get there? This is not a vague promise. It is a certainty built on a timeless understanding of human nature. This audio summary is your map out of that trap. Together, we are going to explore the work of a man who dedicated his life to creating the world's first and only laboratory of human relationships. A man who cracked the code of human interaction. The man who mapped human nature. So who was the master architect of this blueprint? His name was Dale Carnegie, and his story is as remarkable as the principles he taught. Born on a poor Missouri farm, he was a man who knew failure intimately. He once picked strawberries for 5 cents an hour and was so ashamed of his poverty in college that he nearly gave up. He failed as a salesman, weeping in a lonely Nebraska hotel room in despair. He tried acting and realized he would never be a star. By all conventional measures, his early life was a string of disappointments. But Carnegie possessed two things: an insatiable hunger for self-improvement and an incredible power of observation. He realized that his training in public speaking had given him more confidence and ability to deal with people than all his other college courses combined. He wondered, why wasn't this taught? Why was this essential art, the art of getting along with people, completely ignored by the formal education system? So in 1912, he started teaching it himself, conducting courses for business professionals in New York. He didn't have a textbook because one didn't exist. So he created one, not by sitting in an ivory tower, but by using his classes as a real-world laboratory. He and his students tested techniques, shared their experiences, and refined their methods. The book we are about to explore, How to Win Friends and Influence People, wasn't written. It grew. It grew out of the real-life successes and failures of thousands of adults. First published in 1937, it became an overnight sensation, selling over 15 million copies in his lifetime because it addressed the single biggest problem people face in their lives. In this audio summary, we will distill the very essence of Carnegie's timeless wisdom. We'll start with the foundational techniques for handling people, the bedrock upon which all successful relationships are built. Then, we will uncover the simple yet powerful ways to make people genuinely like you. After that, we dive into the art of persuasion, how to win people to your way of thinking without conflict or resentment. And finally, we will explore the qualities of a true leader, how to change people's attitudes and behaviors in a positive, lasting way. Get ready, because the journey we are about to embark on will equip you with the 85% of success that you've been missing. Part 1. The foundation, escaping the trap of criticism. Let's begin with the most fundamental rule of all. It's so important that if you only master this one principle, you will have dramatically improved your life. But it's also the hardest for us to follow because it goes against our every instinct. What is this principle? Don't criticize, condemn, or complain. That's it. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But think about your last 24 hours. How many times did you criticize someone, even in your own mind? How many times did you complain about a situation? How many times did you condemn another person's actions? We do it constantly. We think it's our right, that we are helping, that we are correcting a wrong. But what are we really doing? Let's look at the evidence. Have you ever heard of Two-Gun Crowley? In May 1931, he was a notorious cop killer, trapped in a New York apartment, surrounded by 150 police officers. As machine gun fire ripped through the building, he wrote a letter. Do you know what it said? Did he write, "I'm sorry for the lives I've ruined"? No. He wrote, "Under my coat is a weary heart, but a kind one that would do nobody any harm." When he was finally captured and sentenced to the electric chair, his last words weren't of remorse. They were, "This is what I get for defending myself." Crowley did not blame himself for anything. And here's the crucial point. He's not an exception. Al Capone, America's most infamous gangster, didn't condemn himself. He saw himself as a public benefactor who was unappreciated and misunderstood. The warden of Sing Sing prison for many years, Louis Lawyers, stated that few of the criminals in Sing Sing regard themselves as bad men. They rationalize, they explain, they justify their actions to themselves. Now follow this logic. If men behind bars, men who have committed terrible crimes, don't blame themselves for anything, what on earth makes us think that the everyday people we meet, our employees, our friends, our family members, will react any differently to our criticism? The answer is, they won't. 99 times out of 100, a person will not criticize themselves, no matter how wrong they may be. So, what does criticism actually accomplish? It is futile because it immediately puts the other person on the defensive. It forces them to justify themselves, to dig in their heels, and to defend their precious pride. And it is dangerous because it wounds their sense of importance and arouses a deep, lasting resentment. The great psychologist B.F. Skinner proved that an animal rewarded for good behavior learns far more effectively than one punished for bad. The same is true for humans. Criticism doesn't create lasting change, it creates resentment. Think of criticism like a homing pigeon. You can send it out, but it will always return home to you. often bringing back a flock of resentment with it. So what's the alternative? How did the greats handle this? Abraham Lincoln learned this lesson the hard way. As a young man, he openly ridiculed his political opponents. On one occasion, he wrote an anonymous letter mocking a proud politician named James Shields. Shields was so infuriated, he found out who wrote it and challenged Lincoln to a duel to the death. Lincoln was forced to meet him on a sandbar in the Mississippi River, armed with cavalry broadswords, saved only at the last minute by their seconds. That terrifying incident taught Lincoln an invaluable lesson. He never again wrote an insulting letter. He never again ridiculed anyone. He never again criticized. During the Civil War, when his generals were blundering and the nation was screaming for their heads, Lincoln held his peace, guided by his favorite quote, "Judge not, that ye be not judged." When his wife spoke harshly of the Southern people, Lincoln replied gently, "Don't criticize them. They are just what we would be under similar circumstances." Can you imagine the self-control that took? But wait, it gets even better. The most powerful example came after the Battle of Gettysburg. General Lee was retreating, trapped against the flooded Potomac River. Lincoln saw a golden opportunity to capture Lee's entire army and end the war right there. He ordered General Meade to attack immediately, but Meade hesitated. He called a council of war against orders. He refused to attack. The river fell and Lee escaped. Lincoln was apoplectic with rage. In bitter disappointment, he sat down and wrote a blistering letter to Meade. "My dear General," it began, "I do not believe you appreciate the magnitude of the misfortune involved in Lee's escape. Your golden opportunity is gone, and I am distressed immeasurably because of it. But what happened next is the key to understanding his genius. Meade never saw that letter. Lincoln never mailed it. It was found among his papers after his death. Why? Because Lincoln, in his profound wisdom, put himself in Meade's shoes. He realized the letter would only relieve his own feelings, while making Meade defensive, resentful, and impairing his future usefulness as a commander. Lincoln had learned that any fool can criticize, condemn, and complain, and most fools do. But it takes character and self-control to be understanding and forgiving. So the next time you're tempted to criticize, to correct someone, to complain, stop. Pull out a $5 bill and look at Lincoln's face. Ask yourself, how would Lincoln handle this problem? Instead of condemning people, let's try to understand them. Let's try to figure out why they do what they do. It's far more profitable and intriguing than criticism, and it breeds sympathy, tolerance, and kindness. To know all is to forgive all. The fuel of human action, the craving to be important. If we can't use criticism, how then can we possibly get anyone to do anything? The answer is incredibly simple, yet almost universally overlooked. There is only one way under high heaven to get anybody to do anything. And that is by making the other person want to do it. Remember, there is no other way. Sure, you can use force, threats, or intimidation. You can make an employee cooperate by threatening to fire them, or a child obey with a whip. But these crude methods have intensely undesirable repercussions. The only way to achieve willing, enthusiastic, and lasting cooperation is by giving the other person what they want. And what do people want? What is the deepest, most powerful driving force in human nature? Sigmund Freud said it was the desire to be great. Professor John Dewey called it the desire to be important. William James went even further. He said, the deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated. A craving. Think about that word. It's not a wish, not a desire, but a gnawing, unfaltering hunger. This craving is what separates us from the animals. Dale Carnegie's father used to win blue ribbons for his prized hogs at the county fair. He would proudly display those ribbons on a sheet of muslin for all his visitors to see. The ribbons gave him a feeling of importance. The hogs, of course, didn't care about the ribbons at all. This very desire for a feeling of importance is the engine of civilization. It's what drove an uneducated grocery clerk named Lincoln to study law books. It's what inspired Dickens to write his immortal novels and Rockefeller to amass millions he never spent. It's why people wear the latest fashions, drive the latest cars, and talk endlessly about their brilliant children. The way you get your feeling of importance determines your character. It is the most significant thing about you. John D. Rockefeller got his feeling of importance by funding a hospital in Peking to help millions of poor people. The bank robber Dillinger got his by being public enemy number one. When he was on the run, he proudly announced to a farmer, "I'm Dillinger." The same fundamental craving, expressed in polar opposite ways. And here is where we find our first great tool for influencing others. If this craving is so powerful that people will do anything for it, even go insane to find in a dream world the importance they were denied in reality, then imagine the miracles you and I can achieve by giving people honest, sincere appreciation. But wait, you might be thinking, isn't that just flattery, bare oil, cheap praise? No, there is a vast and crucial difference. Flattery is insincere. Appreciation is sincere. Flattery comes from the teeth out. Appreciation comes from the heart out. Flattery is selfish. Appreciation is unselfish. Flattery is universally condemned. Appreciation is universally admired. Flattery is counterfeit money. It will eventually get you into trouble. Charles Schwab, the first man in American business to be paid a salary of over $1 million a year, knew this secret. Why did Andrew Carnegie pay him such a fortune? Was he a genius in steel manufacturing? No. Schwab himself said he had many men working for him who knew more about steel than he did. Schwab was paid for his ability to deal with people. And what was his secret? In his own words, "I consider my ability to arouse enthusiasm among my people the greatest asset I possess. And the way to develop the best that is in a person is by appreciation and encouragement. I never criticize anyone. I believe in giving a person incentive to work. So I am anxious to praise, but loath to find fault. If I like anything, I am hearty in my approbation, and lavish in my praise." Hearty in approbation and lavish in praise. What does the average person do? The exact opposite. If they don't like something, they raise hell. If they do like it, they say nothing. We nourish the bodies of our children and employees with food, but we starve their self-esteem, their craving for appreciation. So, how do we apply this? We must stop thinking about ourselves, our accomplishments, our wants for a moment. Instead, let's try to figure out the other person's good points. Forget flattery. Let's give honest, sincere appreciation. It doesn't have to be for a grand achievement. It can be for the smallest things. The next time you enjoy a meal at a restaurant, send word to the chef that it was excellently prepared. When a tired sales clerk shows you unusual courtesy, mention it. A study on why wives left their husbands found that one of the primary reasons was a lack of appreciation. Let's be specific. Instead of just saying, "You did a good job," say, "I was really impressed with the way you handled that angry customer. You were calm, professional, and you solved the problem beautifully." Specific praise feels sincere. It shows you were paying attention. This isn't just about being nice, it's about being effective. It's about providing the psychological fuel that makes people want to do their best. Remember the story of Stevie Wonder? As a blind child in a Detroit classroom, his teacher asked for his help to find a lost mouse. She told him that nature had given him a remarkable gift in his ears to compensate for his eyes. It was the first time anyone had shown him appreciation for his hearing. That simple act of sincere appreciation, he later said, was the beginning of a new life. A life that led him to develop that gift and become one of the greatest musicians of our time. This is the power you hold. The power to transform lives, to build loyalty, to inspire action. All by satisfying the deepest craving of human nature. So, starting today, let's stop criticizing and start appreciating. Let's be hearty in our approbation and lavish in our praise. Part 2 of 3. Baiting the hook. The ultimate secret of influence. We've laid the groundwork. We've understood that criticism is futile and appreciation is the fuel of human motivation. Now, we arrive at the engine of persuasion itself, the one single technique that underpins all successful influence. If you can master this, as Dale Carnegie's mentor, Harry A. Overstreet, wrote, you have the whole world with him. He who cannot walks a lonely way. What is this secret? First, arouse in the other person an eager want. It sounds so obvious when you hear it, doesn't it? Yet 90% of people ignore it 90% of the time. Why do we ignore it? Because we are all eternally, ceaselessly, and unshakably interested in what we want. But here's the cold, hard truth. Nobody else is. The rest of the world is just like us. They are interested in what they want. Therefore, the only way on earth to influence other people is to talk about what they want and show them how to get it. This is the pivot point where most human interaction fails. We try to fish for people using the bait we like. Carnegie himself loved strawberries and cream, but when he went fishing, he didn't bait his hook with them. He knew, for some strange reason, fish prefer worms. So he thought about what the fish wanted, not what he wanted. Why don't we use the same common sense when fishing for people? Think about it. You want your kids to stop smoking. Do you preach at them about what you want, about how it worries you? That's talking about your bait. Instead, if you show them that cigarettes may prevent them from making the basketball team or winning a race, you're talking about their worms. You are connecting what you want to what they want. Every single act you have ever performed since the day you were born was performed because you wanted something. Even a selfless act, like donating to the Red Cross, is no exception. You did it because you wanted to help. Because you wanted that beautiful, divine feeling of doing good more than you wanted the money. Action springs from our fundamental desires. So, before you ever try to persuade someone, pause and ask yourself this critical question. How can I make this person want to do it? Let's see this in action. Carnegie once rented a grand ballroom in a New York hotel for a series of lectures. Suddenly, the hotel informed him his rent would be nearly tripled. The news came after tickets were printed and announcements made. The natural human reaction would be to storm into the manager's office and argue. This is outrageous, I won't pay it. But what would that accomplish? An argument would boil. Pride would make it impossible for the manager to back down, and Carnegie would lose. Instead, he baited the hook. He went to see the manager and said, I was a bit shocked when I got your letter, but I don't blame you at all. If I were in your position, I'd probably have done the same. Your duty as manager is to make the hotel as profitable as possible. Right away, he's on the manager's side. There's no argument. Then, Carnegie took out a piece of paper and drew a line down the middle, labeling one side advantages and the other disadvantages of the rent increase. Under advantages, he wrote ballroom free. He said, You'll have the advantage of renting the ballroom out for dances and conventions, which will bring in far more money than my lectures. He was talking entirely about what the manager wanted. Then he moved to the other column. Now, let's consider the disadvantages. First, instead of increasing your income from me, you're going to wipe it out. I can't pay the new rent, so I'll be forced to hold my lectures somewhere else. Second, my lectures attract crowds of educated, cultured people to your hotel. That's fantastic advertising for you. In fact, if you spent $5,000 on newspaper ads, you couldn't bring as many people to see your hotel as I can. That's worth a lot, isn't it? He handed the sheet to the manager and said, "I wish you'd carefully consider both sides and let me know your final decision." The next day, he received a letter telling him his rent would be increased by only 50%, not 300%. Carnegie got this reduction without saying a single word about what he wanted. This is the secret. As Henry Ford said, "If there is any one secret of success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle as well as from your own." Are you beginning to see how powerful this is? Let's turn to another arena of life, making people like you. The principles here are just as simple and just as profound. The 6-word secret to being welcome anywhere. What is the quickest and surest way to make people like you? Let's not study theories. Let's study the technique of the greatest winner of friends the world has ever known. Who is that? A dog. A dog makes its living by giving you nothing but love. When you come home, he wags his tail, he leaps with joy. He almost jumps out of his skin to show you how much he likes you. And we know his affection is genuine. He has no ulterior motives. A dog knows, by divine instinct, what it takes most humans a lifetime to learn, if they ever learn it at all. You can make more friends in 2 months by becoming genuinely interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. Let me repeat that. Because it is a foundation stone of all personal relationships. You can make more friends in 2 months by becoming genuinely interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. Yet, what do most of us do? We blunder through life trying to be interesting. We talk about ourselves, our accomplishments, our problems. A study of telephone conversations revealed the most frequently used word is the personal pronoun I. I. It was used 3,900 times in 500 conversations. And when you look at a group photo that you're in, who do you look for first? Yourself, of course. The simple truth is this: people are not interested in you. They are not interested in me. They are interested in themselves. Morning, noon, and after dinner. The famous Viennese psychologist Alfred Adler wrote, "It is the individual who is not interested in his fellow men who has the greatest difficulties in life and provides the greatest injury to others. It is from among such individuals that all human failures spring." So, how do you show this genuine interest? Let's look at a master. Theodore Roosevelt was astonishingly popular. Even his servants loved him. His valet, James Amos, wrote a book about him. He tells a story of how his wife once asked the president about a bobwhite bird. Roosevelt described it to her fully. Sometime later, the phone in their little cottage rang. It was the president himself. He had called to tell her there was a bobwhite outside her window, and that if she looked, she might see it. He would remember the names of all the White House staff, even the scullery maids. How could anyone not like a man like that? You don't have to be a president to use this. You just have to care. It's about remembering birthdays, asking about people's children, their hobbies, their dreams. One can win the attention, time, and cooperation of even the most sought-after people by becoming genuinely interested in them. When Carnegie wanted famous authors like Fannie Hurst and Rupert Hughes to speak to his class, he didn't talk about what he wanted. He and his students wrote a letter saying they admired the author's work and were deeply interested in getting their advice and learning the secrets of their success. They enclosed a list of questions about the author's life and methods. Who wouldn't like that? Of course, the authors came. If you want to make friends, put yourself out to do things for other people. Things that require time, energy, and unselfishness. The $1 million gesture. Now, for a simple way to make a great first impression. What is the most powerful signal you can send to another person, often without saying a word? It's not your clothes, your car, or your title. The expression you wear on your face is far more important than the clothes you wear on your back. And the most valuable expression? A smile. Charles Schwab claimed his smile had been worth $1 million, and he probably wasn't exaggerating. Actions speak louder than words, and a smile says, "I like you, you make me happy, I am glad to see you." But it can't be an insincere, mechanical grin. That fools no one. We're talking about a real smile, a heartwarming smile, one that comes from within. The effect is powerful, even when unseen. Telephone companies train their operators to smile when they talk on the phone. Why? Because your smile comes through in your voice. A manager trying to recruit a top PhD graduate found he was competing with larger, more famous companies. He won, and when he asked the new hire why he chose his company, the young man said, "I think it was because managers in the other companies spoke on the phone in a cold, business-like manner. Your voice sounded as if you were glad to hear from me, that you really wanted me to be part of your organization." He was still answering his phone with a smile. But what if you don't feel like smiling? Then what? 2 things. First, force yourself to smile. Act as if you were already happy, and that will tend to make you happy. The philosopher William James explained that while we think action follows feeling, in reality, action and feeling go together. By regulating our actions, which are under our direct control, we can indirectly regulate our feelings. To find cheerfulness, sit up cheerfully and act and speak as if cheerfulness were already there. Second, understand that happiness doesn't depend on outward conditions. It depends on inner conditions. It isn't what you have, or who you are, or where you are that makes you happy or unhappy. It is what you think about it. Abe Lincoln famously remarked that most folks are about as happy as they make up their minds to be. Your smile is a messenger of your goodwill. It brightens the lives of all who see it. To someone who has seen a dozen scowls, it is like the sun breaking through the clouds. The sweetest sound. What is the most important word in any language to any person? It's not love, money, or free. Jim Farley, who managed Franklin D. Roosevelt's presidential campaign, knew the answer. He was said to be able to call 50,000 people by their first names. He discovered early in life the principle that can work magic for you. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. Think about the power of that. When you remember and use someone's name, you are paying them a subtle but profound compliment. You are saying, "You are important, you are an individual, you matter to me." But if you forget it, misspell it, or mispronounce it, you place yourself at a sharp disadvantage. Andrew Carnegie, the Steel King, knew this secret. When he was a boy in Scotland, he had a mother rabbit that soon produced a nest of babies, but he had nothing to feed them. He had a brilliant idea. He told the neighborhood kids that if they gathered enough clover and dandelions to feed the rabbits, he would name the bunnies in their honor. The plan worked like magic. Years later, he used the same psychology to make millions. When he wanted to sell steel rails to the Pennsylvania Railroad, whose president was J. Edgar Thompson, what did Carnegie do? He built a massive steel mill in Pittsburgh and named it the Edgar Thomson Steel Works. So, when the railroad needed rails, where do you think Thompson bought them? This isn't just for kings of industry. It works for everyone. A flight attendant who made it a practice to learn passengers' names received glowing compliments and created loyal customers for her airline. A cafeteria worker who always had a scowl on her face was transformed when a regular customer smiled and greeted her by her name, Eunice. That day, she piled his plate high with ham and potato chips. She felt seen. She felt important. Remembering a name takes effort. It requires concentration, repetition, maybe even association. But this effort pays enormous dividends. Franklin D. Roosevelt knew this. He took the time to remember the names of even the mechanics who worked on his car. Napoleon III, Emperor of France, made it a practice. If he didn't hear a name clearly, he'd say, "So sorry, I didn't get the name clearly." Then, if it was unusual, "How is it spelled?" He would repeat the name in conversation and associate it with the person's features. The name sets an individual apart. It makes them unique. When you use it, your request or your conversation takes on a special importance. It is the magic key that unlocks goodwill. The art of the listener. We arrive now at one of the most neglected skills in all of human relations, a skill so powerful that mastering it can make people think you are a brilliant conversationalist, even if you barely say a word. What is this skill? It's the art of being a good listener and encouraging others to talk about themselves. Think about the last conversation you had. Were you truly listening, or were you just waiting for your turn to speak? Most people, when trying to win others over, do far too much talking. They are so concerned with what they are going to say next that they don't keep their ears open. But here's the secret. The people you are talking to are 100 times more interested in themselves and their wants and problems than they are in you and your problems. A person's own toothache means more to them than a famine in China that kills 1 million people. Dale Carnegie discovered this at a dinner party, where he met a distinguished botanist. Carnegie knew nothing about botany, but he was fascinated. He sat on the edge of his chair, listening intently as the botanist spoke for hours about exotic plants and indoor gardens. Carnegie ignored everyone else and was totally absorbed. Later, the botanist told their host that Carnegie was a most interesting conversationalist. An interesting conversationalist? Carnegie had said almost nothing. But he had given the botanist something he craved: rapt attention. That kind of exclusive listening is one of the highest compliments we can pay anyone. This works in business, in sales, in resolving complaints. The most violent critic will often soften and be subdued in the presence of a patient, sympathetic listener. Why? Because you are allowing them to relieve the pressure. You are giving them a feeling of importance by letting them know their opinions matter. You are letting them talk themselves out. Once their ideas have been expressed, they are far more likely to listen to yours. The New York Telephone Company once had to deal with a viciously angry customer who cursed, refused to pay his bills, and filed lawsuits. They sent their most skillful troubleshooter to see him. This representative didn't argue, he just listened. He sympathized with the man's grievances. He let him rave. He listened for 3 hours on the first visit. He came back and listened more. Before the 4th visit was over, the man had paid all his bills in full, withdrawn his complaints, and become friendly. What had he really wanted all along? Not a different phone bill. He wanted a feeling of importance, which he got first by complaining, and later, more satisfyingly, from an attentive listener from the company. So, if you want to be a good conversationalist, be an attentive listener. To be interesting, be interested. Ask questions that other people will enjoy answering. Encourage them to talk about themselves and their accomplishments. Remember the French philosopher La Rochefoucauld said, "If you want enemies, excel your friends. But if you want friends, let your friends excel you." Why? Because when our friends excel us, they feel important. When we excel them, they feel inferior and envious. Let them do most of the talking, and you will be beloved. The royal road to the heart. Building on the power of listening, we come to a related principle. Talk in terms of the other person's interests. The royal road to a person's heart is to talk about the things he or she treasures most. Theodore Roosevelt was a master of this. Every guest at the White House was astonished by the range of his knowledge. Whether his visitor was a cowboy, a diplomat, or a politician, Roosevelt knew what to say. How? It was simple. Whenever he was expecting a visitor, he would stay up late the night before, reading and studying the subject in which he knew his guest was particularly interested. He didn't do this to show off his own knowledge. He did it to connect, to show respect, to open the door to the other person's world. A baker named Mr. Duvernoy in New York had been trying to sell bread to a specific hotel manager for 4 years. He called on him weekly, went to the same social events, even took a room in the hotel. Nothing worked. Then, he decided to change his tactics. He resolved to find out what truly interested the manager. He discovered the man was the passionate international president of a society of hotel executives called the Hotel Greeters of America. The next time Duvernoy saw him, he didn't mention bread. He started talking about the greeters. The effect was electric. The manager spoke for half an hour, his voice vibrant with enthusiasm about his hobby, his passion. A few days later, the hotel's steward called Duvernoy and asked him to bring over samples and prices. The steward said, "I don't know what you did to the old boy, but he sure is sold on you." Duvernoy had made more progress in one conversation about the manager's interests than he had in 4 years of talking about his own. Talking in terms of the other person's interests isn't manipulation, it's connection. It's showing that you see them as a person, not just a means to an end. It's a two-way street. Both parties benefit. The magic phrase. Now for a phrase that can stop arguments, eliminate ill feeling, and create goodwill instantly. Are you ready for it? I don't blame you one iota for feeling as you do. If I were you, I would undoubtedly feel just as you do. You can say that and be 100% sincere because it's true. If you had the other person's mind, temperament, and experiences, you would feel just as they do. This simple act of sympathy can neutralize the most acid-filled situations. Sympathy is the ability to honestly try to see things from the other person's point of view. When you are faced with a disagreement, don't argue, don't condemn. Instead, pause and say to yourself, how would I feel if I were in his shoes? By becoming interested in the cause, you become less likely to dislike the effect. 3/4 of the people you will ever meet are hungering and thirsting for sympathy. Give it to them, and they will love you. A piano teacher, Joyce Norris, had a student named Babette with exceptionally long fingernails, a serious handicap for playing properly. Instead of demanding she cut them, Mrs. Norris waited until after the first lesson. Then she said, "Babette, you have attractive hands and beautiful fingernails. If you want to play the piano as well as you are capable of, and as fast as you'd like to, I'm wondering if cutting your nails shorter might help you achieve that." She sympathized with Babette's pride in her nails, but connected the change to Babette's own desire to play well. Babette's reaction? Tears welled up, but she agreed and came to the next lesson with her nails trimmed, having made the sacrifice herself for a goal she wanted. So if you want to win people to your way of thinking, Always be sympathetic with the other person's ideas and desires. The leader's touch. How to change people without giving offense. We have reached the final and most advanced level of human relations. Leadership. How do you, as a manager, a parent, or a friend, change another person's behavior or attitude without arousing resentment? First, begin with praise and honest appreciation. A barber lathers a man before he shaves him. It's always easier to listen to unpleasant things after we have heard some praise of our good points. When President Calvin Coolidge wanted to critique his secretary's punctuation, he didn't start with the criticism. He first told her, "That's a pretty dress you are wearing this morning, and you are a very attractive young woman." After she blushed with pleasure, he then gently added, "Now, I wish you would be a little bit more careful with your punctuation." Second, call attention to people's mistakes indirectly. This is an art form. Charles Schwab was walking through a steel mill when he saw some employees smoking directly under a no-smoking sign. Did he yell, "Hey, can't you read?" No. He walked over, handed each man a cigar and said, "I'll appreciate it, boys, if you will smoke these on the outside." The men knew they'd been caught, but they admired him for not berating them and for giving them a gift that made them feel important. A small change in wording can make all the difference. Instead of saying, "Johnny, we're proud you raised your grades, but you failed algebra," change the but to and. "We're proud you raised your grades, and if you continue your efforts, you can bring your algebra up next term." The first phrase sounds like criticism disguised as praise. The second is genuine encouragement. Third, talk about your own mistakes before criticizing the other person. It's much easier to listen to a list of your faults if the person criticizing you begins by humbly admitting that he is far from perfect himself. When Dale Carnegie's niece was making mistakes as his new secretary, he stopped himself before criticizing her. He thought, "Wait a minute, I'm twice her age and have 10,000 times the business experience. What blunders was I making at 19? He concluded his own record was far worse. So he began by saying, "You've made a mistake, Josephine, but the Lord knows it's no worse than many I have made. I've been guilty of so many stupid, silly things myself. I have very little inclination to criticize you or anyone. But don't you think it would have been wiser if you had done so and so?" This approach inspires change, rather than commanding it. Fourth, ask questions instead of giving direct orders. Owen D. Young, the brilliant industrialist, never gave a direct order. He would say things like, "You might consider this," or "Do you think that would work?" Asking questions saves a person's pride and gives them a feeling of importance. It encourages cooperation instead of rebellion. It also stimulates the creativity of the person you ask. People are much more likely to accept an order if they have had a part in the decision that caused it to be issued. And finally, if you want to spur people on to success, remember the wisdom of animal trainers. Praise even the slightest improvement. This inspires the other person to keep improving. Praise is like sunlight to the human spirit. We cannot flower and grow without it. Abilities wither under criticism. They blossom under encouragement. Give someone a fine reputation to live up to, and they will make astonishing efforts rather than see you disillusioned. Make the fault seem easy to correct. Use encouragement, and you can literally transform the people around you. Your new way of life. So, what have we learned on this journey? We've learned that 85% of success is rooted not in what we know, but in how we relate to others. We've discovered that the human ego is a fragile and powerful thing, and our natural instincts to criticize, condemn, and complain. are the surest paths to failure and resentment. We have learned that the deepest craving in human nature is the desire to be important. And by giving honest, sincere appreciation, we can unlock untold potential in others and earn their lifelong loyalty. We've seen that the only way to influence anyone is to arouse in them an eager want, to talk about what they want, not what we want. We've uncovered the simple secrets to making people like us. Become genuinely interested in them, grace them with a real smile, and remember that the sweetest sound to their ears is their own name. We've learned that being a good listener is more persuasive than being a good talker, and that talking in terms of the other person's interests is the royal road to their heart. And finally, we've explored the toolkit of a true leader. How to change people for the better by beginning with praise, calling attention to mistakes indirectly, talking about our own faults first, asking questions instead of giving orders, and using encouragement to make any fault seem easy to correct. These are not tricks. This is not a formula for manipulation. As Carnegie himself insisted, these principles will only work when they come from the heart. What we have discussed is not a bag of tricks, but a new way of life. It's a life of less friction, less frustration, and less anger. It's a life of more influence, more prestige, and more happiness. The power to transform your relationships and your life is now in your hands. But remember, the great educational thinker, Herbert Spencer's words: "The great aim of education is not knowledge, but action." This is an action book. The knowledge is worthless unless you apply it. Don't stop here. The journey of growth is a lifelong adventure. If you've found this summary inspiring, I wholeheartedly encourage you to read the full book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Let it become your working handbook for human relations. Refer to it often, practice its principles daily, and watch as the world opens up to you in ways you never thought possible. Your new life begins now.